Get the home field advantage every time with Fairfield by Marriott, official hotel partner of the NCAA. Whether you're a student athlete working toward your championship dreams or your team's biggest fan, Fairfield by Marriott has everything you need to get ready for game day. From comfortable guest rooms to complimentary hot breakfast, Fairfield is part of the Marriott Bonvoy portfolio of hotels and official hotel partner of the NCAA. Visit fairfield.marriott.com to book your next game day stay.
For the ones who get it done, the most important part is the one you need now. And the best partner is the one who can deliver. That's why millions of maintenance and repair pros trust Grainger, because we have professional-grade supplies for every industry, even hard-to-find products. And we have same-day pickup and next-day delivery on most orders. But most importantly, we have an unwavering commitment to help keep you up and running. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Welcome into The Verge, a show which covers the Baltimore Orioles minor leagues. The Verge is part of BSL Radio. Baltimore Sports and Life is dedicated to analysis and discussion on the Orioles, Baltimore Ravens, and the University of Maryland. The site has a team of writers providing coverage of those teams and houses live streaming content weekly. Join the conversations at the message board, like BSL on Facebook, and follow BSL on Twitter.
Want to make a podcast? Spotify's got a platform that lets you make one super easily, then distribute it everywhere and even earn money, all in one place for free. It's called Spotify for Podcasters, and here's how it works. Spotify for Podcasters lets you record and edit podcasts right from your phone or computer, so no matter what your setup is like, you can start creating today. Then you can distribute your podcast to Spotify and everywhere else podcasts are heard. Video podcasts are also available on Spotify. With Spotify for Podcasters, you can earn money in a variety of ways, including ads and podcast subscriptions. And best of all, it's totally free with no catch. Ever since we discovered Spotify for Podcasters, we feel like having options like video podcasts and Q&A lets us be more creative on another level. I highly recommend you give it a try. Download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to www.spotify.com/podcasters to get started.
Welcome to On the Verge. This is Zach Spedden, joined as always by Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens. And we've got a lot to get to on tonight's episode, including the best of the rest. Who were the best players to just miss our top 50 prospect list, which we released last week. We'll reveal them tonight. And we'll have a little bit of spring training coverage as Bob is joining us from down in Sarasota. And before I forget to mention this, Bob, our live viewers can see you here. Is that a San Diego Padres curtain in the background?
Yeah, as you can see, I'm staying at a very nice hotel with very current and up-to-date fashion styles. Yeah, this is straight out of the 70s. Maybe it's in honor of Manny Machado signing that extension. That's what it is.
Yes, and Manny Machado is not coming back to Baltimore, and we can end any speculation that may have started about that. On last week's show, we got into our top 50 prospect list, and the way we do our voting, we each make individual lists, and then that is aggregated into our top 50. And every year there are a handful of players who got top 50 votes from one or sometimes two of us and yet missed the overall top 50. So we're going to get a chance to recognize those players tonight. We're going to start with the player who ranks 51st currently, and that is Anthony Servideo. Servideo has been in our list since he was originally drafted by the Orioles back in 2020 out of Ole Miss. First as a top 30 prospect, and then as a top 50 prospect for most of last year. The issue for Servideo, though, has been that he cannot stay on the field. He played in just about a month's worth of games with Delmarva in 2021 before an injury cost him a significant portion of that season, and then he missed an extended amount of time last year as a result of injuries. So we have yet to see much of Servideo. So we don't know if the breakout that he showed as a hitter and his final year at Ole Miss has sustained itself in the pro ball or not. And while the reports about his defense at shortstop have been good when he is on the field, we just have not seen much of him. So, Nick, I'll start with you here. Really, it just comes down to the fact that Servideo has not been able to stay healthy, and now entering his third, what should be his third full season of professional baseball, has, I believe, about less than half a season's worth of games under his belt. So where do you think things stand with him right now?
I wish I knew kind of more where he was at, physically, mentally, just this whole situation. But just imagine if like he was able to stay on the field these last 2 years, though, and if we would have continued to see those improvements with the bat that he made. I know there were a lot of comments coming out of the draft that he was more of the lighter hitting shortstop at Ole Miss, and then that COVID shortened year, the bat really started to come around, and a lot of people thought it was legit turnaround. And imagine if like that kept growing, and we knew he had the major league ready glove, and you add him into this mix of deep middle infield prospects we have in this system. It'd be just unbelievable to see. But at the same time, this is why you stockpile the system with all these guys, because you're going to have cases like Servideo. When he was with Delmarva, like, he walked 28 times in 20 games that year in 2020 with Delmarva, which was absurd. And the glove, I just remember one play in particular. I think he was playing second base. They had him shifted over to like the left side of the second base bag. Ball gets hit in that kind of Bermuda Triangle area, behind second base, short right field. And he's not in the frame. And all of a sudden you see this body come flying into the frame, and it's Servideo making the grab. Like, that play stuck with me. The range he showed. But yeah, the bat just hasn't been there because he hasn't been on the field. I mean, he did have, between that defense and his on base percentage was like pushing 500, I think, in 2021. When you look at that, that's why I was so optimistic going into last year about Servideo, but he had multiple injuries, some other setbacks as well. And it just, 20-something games I think he played last year, all with Delmarva. So he still isn't even at high A. I mean, like, maybe we see him have a good spring and he starts the year in high A and starts hitting his way back, but he hasn't played regularly now since 2019 at Ole Miss. So I think all we can do at this point is just hope he stays healthy is on the field next year.
Yeah, I didn't have him on my personal top 50. He's just outside of it for me, but yeah, I feel like this is a make or break year. I mean, it's unfortunate the injuries have kind of piled up on him, but I feel like even the guys that were international signings and lower level guys the last couple of years are now gained on him or even passed him by. So, if Darryl Hernandez couldn't even have much room in the system and got traded last month, and can't imagine Servideo has much room himself unless he can really just stay healthy this year, get back on track, and show what he did in that brief time early on in Delmarva in 2021.
Yeah, Nick touched on it. 28 walks in 20 games at Delmarva that year. He had a walk rate of just a little bit over 30%. So the patience was something that had been noted as a positive for him coming out of Ole Miss, and it kind of gave us hope, and I think a lot of other people hope, that the progress he had made in that COVID-shortened 2020 season was going to carry over to pro ball. But unfortunately, he just has not had an extended run on the field in now almost 3 years. We'll move on now to number 52, and depending on which prospect list you have looked at nationally this offseason, you either maybe have not heard of this guy or you think that we have way underrated him, and that is right-handed pitcher Juan Nunez. Nunez was part of the return for Jorge Lopez in the trade with the Twins last year, and he currently ranks 20th on Fangraphs list, which came out just a few weeks before ours. Eric Longenhagen at Fangraphs had noted Nunez's fastball and slider combination, plus a changeup that needs development. Fangraphs actually has Nunez projected as a starter. He has yet to pitch in full season ball. He pitched at the FCL last year, first for the Twins, and then with the Orioles. And when I say he hasn't pitched in full season ball yet, he hasn't started a season there because he did get to Delmarva at the end of the year. And while he struggled with walks, it was just a small sample size of 14 2/3 innings pitched. So Nunez really going to get that introduction to low A at the beginning of this season. And Bob, when we look back in maybe even just a couple of months, are we going to think that we way underrated Nunez or that maybe Fangraphs is a little bit too bullish out of the gate?
It's very possible we could be underrating him. I mean, the numbers are great from both his time with the Twins and with the Orioles. I feel like the strikeouts are up there. The looks we saw from Eric Garfield down in the FCL look good. Short little sample size at Delmarva to end the year. But it's a guy that if he, turns into a starting pitcher this year, and he can really skyrocket up this list if he can, dominate Delmarva. Maybe he gets up to high A Aberdeen because he is a little bit older as a converted catcher, converted position player. So, clearly the arm talent is there. It's just a matter of if he's a late converter to a pitcher, then much like Seth Johnson, who's all the way up near our top 10. I mean, this is a guy that could, learn quickly and just hone that talent in and become more of a pitcher than a thrower. I think, we could very well be saying this is the steal of this trade. But I feel like each one of these players that we got back from Jorge Lopez could end up being the steal of the trade, and Juan Nunez is just another one of them.
It's really crazy to see the really diverse thoughts and I think projections on all these guys acquiring that Jorge Lopez deal. And I'm just fascinated to see how these guys develop, because the Orioles are clearly high on each of these arms that they targeted. They targeted them for specific reasons, yet no one in the industry really gave these guys much thought. Like Povich is unranked on every list outside the top 100, except for obviously ESPN. We know he's 54 and people think he still sucks because of his random AA ERA or whatever reason. And people think Jorge Lopez was going to carry this team to a World Series or something, even though he's never been good his entire career. But my point being, Povich's ceiling is enormously high. We know that. We talk more about him later on. Rojas, we talked about last week. He's got his own impressive ceiling. Then you've got Nunez. I do think 20 might be a little too high, even though I know Fangraphs, the way they do their list is the future value, that ceiling, right? That's why you see, Jackson Holiday ahead of someone like Grayson Rodriguez. And I think that's part of why you see Colton Cowser a little bit lower on that list, but still at 20 in this system does seem kind of extremely bullish on Nunez. I mean, he's good. If he's out there throwing 95, 96 miles an hour with this 60 grade slider, according to the Fangraphs report, sure, let's see what you can do. I mean, we did get to see him at least a little bit in Delmarva, and he's shorter. I think he's only 5'10", 5'11". He's sub 6 feet, and he's thick. He's thick in the right places. So I mean, he's got that power, and we'll see what happens as he moves up. But yeah, I want to see what all four of these guys do that they got back for Lopez, because it's the opinions vary so highly on them. So we'll see what the Orioles are able to do with all these guys.
As I was sorting it out, it wasn't like I had a quota on the number of pitchers from the Jorge Lopez deal that I was going to include on my list. But as I was sorting out Rojas and Nunez, I went with Rojas on my list because Rojas is younger, left-handed. You've had the report of the fastball, velo uptick. But Nunez, I feel like in his own right, could really break out this year, because there's a lot of underlying traits there that are good. And if the Orioles can work with him to develop a changeup and his command is good over an extended run at Delmarva, I could see him moving up some lists. And, 20 probably is aggressive right now. I wouldn't put him objectively on a list ahead of Justin Armbruster or someone in that tier. But when you consider how Fangraphs does their list, it does make a little more sense. We'll go now to another pitcher who is very intriguing. That is Alfred Vega. Vega was acquired from the Yankees in the minor league phase of this year's Rule 5 draft. He has only limited experience at a full season level, and he pitched primarily in the FCL last year. However, after the Orioles picked him up, Baseball America was one of the outlets who noted that this could be a good pickup for the Orioles. And we heard afterwards from Mike Snyder, I think it was quoted at Masson and a few other places, that the Orioles had their eyes on Vega for a while and were happy to get him in the minor league phase of the Rule 5 draft. I know that Nick has very, very strong positive feelings about Vega, so I'll let him start this one out.
Yeah, I don't know why. He just really sticks out to me. I just think first round pick, minor league phase of the Rule 5 draft, like you mentioned, snagged out of the Yankees system. He's listed at 6'1", 169, which I don't think he's pretty interactive with us on social media, and I don't think he's 169 pounds anymore at this point. But normally, you look at someone who's 22 years old and has no experience past the FCL, and you probably want to write him off. But he had a lot of injuries that have kind of slowed him down. And you look at some of the numbers. He struck out 22 and walked just 4. Last year, 15 FCL innings. Just 2 runs allowed. If he's throwing 97 miles an hour with 4 different pitches, and Baseball America's report here, they also did 10 names, the 10, I forget how they worded it to be exact. I don't know if it was high ceiling names to watch from the minor league phase of the Rule 5 draft, but they highlighted 10 guys, and Vega was the first one. And they said he tops out 97, a sweepy slider, 2-plane curveball, and mid-80s changeup. So, I mean, if you've got that, forget the age, I think, at this point. Let him get to Delmarva. Hopefully he's in, probably a starter. I imagine he's in Delmarva's rotation, or they'll probably do to get a lot of those arms in, a lot of 3-4 innings. You go 3-4 innings, then you go 3-4 innings. Nobody's working 6-7 innings in Delmarva, but give him 3-4 innings, let him start games and see what he can do. But if you got 4 pitches and that kind of stuff, like if he hits early in Delmarva, he could be in Aberdeen in no time and right back on track, I think. Just a really, really interesting name, I think, to watch this season.
Yeah, interesting name and a great name. I mean, Alfred Vega, come on, let's go. Yeah, very similar to Nunez in the fact that he's a little bit older, but good numbers and good stuff. So, he can move fast if they're able to just unlock whatever, they see that's in there. Clearly, he's got the perfect mix for what this Orioles player development team looks for from a pitcher. High velocity fastball. I'm sure it's hoppy just because they took him. Sweep and slider. The changeup is potentially there. Maybe they can improve both of those, one of those. And if he's got a curveball, I'm not sure how good it is, but I just feel like he's going to be super fun to watch. Just watching clips of him just seems like a really entertaining pitcher. And, that's the thing with these international players now coming up through the system in the low minors. It's like at least one or some of these guys are going to hit, and they're going to hit hard, and they're going to just kind of come out of nowhere and hopefully be like the Houston Astros, where it's just our entire rotation and bullpen are filled with these guys. But Vega could be one. So can Nunez, and it's exciting that we're finally to this point in the international program. It only took 4 or 5 years, and he didn't even come from our own program.
Go to another pitcher, and this is a name that should be pretty familiar to Orioles fans, as he just pitched a full season at High A Aberdeen. That is Peter Van Loon. What stood out about Van Loon this past season is that on a very good Ironbirds team, he was probably one of their most dependable arms, throwing 88 2/3 innings and striking out 97 batters along the way. And while win-loss record is not something we look at, or I think most prospect evaluators look at with pitchers, it is worth noting Van Loon went a nice 11-4 along the way with the Ironbirds. We have liked Van Loon for a while, in particular his secondaries. So he's been on our radar, and he did get top 50 consideration this time around, falling just short of the list. So, Bob, I think you've had the opportunity to see Van Loon throw in person, correct? And kind of give us your impressions of him.
Yeah, he's impressive. Obviously a big guy, big, tall guy. He's a pitcher in the Orioles. Of course he is. Throws hard, and to go along with those secondaries that we like. And I actually had him, I can't remember if I updated my personal list, but I think I'm the one that kind of snuck him in at the very bottom of my top 50. I'm looking at my spreadsheet now, and I think I updated it slightly in the time since we submitted our list. But yeah, I like him. I think he could easily be this year's, and I know he came the same draft as Armbruster, right? But I feel like he could be this year's Armbruster in the sense that he really kind of gets a little more attention and does a little, what is this? Oh yeah, I remember that. Nick swoons for Peter Van Loon. Well, now I'm swooning for him. And just a big guy with some good pitches. And it seems like, he had some ups and downs throughout the season, but if he can get some consistency and just develop a little bit more, I feel like he's at least another bullpen option, but I think he's got a chance to start. He's durable. It seems like he pitched all year long. And yeah, I'm curious to see I'm assuming he'll start with Double A Bowie, and it'll be fun to watch him work with Forrest Herman, continue to work with Forrest Herman.
Yeah, I think I was a lot more excited going into last season. I mean, he just seems like a guy who, he's tall, he's 6'5" with 4 pitches. And like you mentioned, the velo is good, but it's like, I don't really know if he has just like that nasty wipeout pitch that he can go to. Like and I know he's been working as a starter, but if you envision him more as a reliever, what's going to be that pitch that kind of separates him? I just feel like he's kind of like some of the hitters we talk about at the back end of our top 50 list, where nothing really stands out except his size, obviously, but nothing really stands out with his stuff, but everything's just good. Like there's really no big holes in his game. Everything is just solid across the board. And he just kind of quietly gets the job done. You mentioned the wins. Yeah, I think it was like 8-0 at one point in the season. So if we'll see. I want to see what he does in Double A, to be honest, and see. I imagine they keep him in the rotation, but I want to see what he can do against more advanced hitters. And, this could be the year. He's the type of guy that I want to see succeed. A small school guy from the West Coast. The Orioles can go out and snag this guy. I think it was UC Irvine, one of the Cali schools that they snagged him out of. You get a small school West Coast guy, as an East Coast team, bring him into the org and build him up into something special. That's a huge win, but I think I'll have a stronger opinion on him once I see him a little bit more in Bowie next year.
Yeah, very Drew Rom of him to start undefeated for a while. And I feel like, Ryan Watson, we kind of weren't thinking much of going into 2022, and now look at him. So I could see Van Loon have a Ryan Watson type of year too.
The last player to receive a vote that we'll note tonight, although we have a list of guys that we're going to talk about as well outside of that mix, and that is Creed Willems, who last year went to Delmarva about a month or so into the season after only playing 10 games at the FCL the year before, after being drafted by the Orioles out of high school in the 2021 draft. It was a struggle at times for Willems offensively, although he picked things up late in the season as he batted .281 with an .865 OPS in the month of August. He's probably going to go back to Delmarva this year, where the Shorebirds will also have Samuel Basayo. So you're going to be looking at two left-handed hitting young catchers who project to hit for power, and now it's going to be a matter of figuring out how you get them at bats and innings behind the plate, which they both need. But things that we heard about Willems, his leadership, his ability to work with the pitching staff last year were all very positive. However, the struggles up and down at the plate leave us with some question marks. So, Nick, I'll start with you here. We talked about Willems a lot last season, and it seemed like we were kind of waiting for him to settle in and break out the plate, and we got it a little bit at the end. But based on what we saw last year, do you think that there are some concerns about him offensively, or is this a product of him just being young for low A and not really having a lot of experience before he got there?
I think that and a little bit more. It did seem like that Creed Willems was the guy once he got to Delmarva and started playing games and more people started watching him. I feel like he was every single day we were getting questions about Creed Willems. But he's a character. So he's a fun guy to follow. But yeah, I've been up and down on Willems since the draft. I think I initially really enjoyed the pick because we heard the reports of him, the Orioles bringing him in for a workout at Camden Yards, and he was sending balls onto Utah Street with a wooden bat as this high school kid. And then I think we saw some videos where he pitched in high school and could run it up into like the mid-90s or something ridiculous. Like, all right, if you can't stick behind the plate, you got an arm like that, you enter the Orioles development program and maybe they turn you into an outfielder. I mean, there were options there, but he just didn't hit in the FCL that year. And it wasn't just the fact that he didn't hit because he was an 18-year-old kid making his pro debut. And he's a catcher. So I'm not expecting him to hit a lot, but there was just like, the Orioles just gave him $1 million, maybe a little bit more. I don't remember his exact signing bonus. I know it was at least $1 million. And there was just no talk, no discussion. It was just he was another guy down there in the FCL. And so that kind of turned me off a little bit. But when he got to Delmarva, you saw the arm instantly, throwing guys out left and right. And you heard reports. We've had pitchers on this show who were like, yeah, Creed's the guy. I love working with Creed behind the plate. He got high praise from Adley Rutschman, even. I think when Adley was getting called up or sometime during spring training. I don't remember when that was. But a lot of people in this organization really love Creed. I just think he was 18, 19. He's a catcher, so catcher, that offense is going to be delayed. That's going to come much later in your career. Everybody's not Adley Rutschman and can hit bombs out of the gate. And he's working with that staff in Delmarva. There's a language barrier. We know the Delmarva rotation, the pitching staff, there's constant churning, guys getting cut, guys getting sent back down to the FCO. I just think he had a lot to learn. And we saw by the end of the season, that bat really did come around. The power started to shine through. So going into this year, I'm a lot more confident in Creed. And I'm really excited to see him and Basayo together behind the plate in Delmarva.
Yeah, I just think, they clearly gave him $1 million, a good bonus for a reason. There's clearly upside there. I just think he's more of a project than maybe we first imagined when the pick was taken. Like you said, he's a catcher, and it seems like he could potentially stick behind the plate. So I think he just needs to, everyone knows, needs to work on the conditioning a little bit, work on the body. Keith Law, what a low blow that was. But it's funny that you could see Samuel Basayo just kind of like tortoise in the hair lap him here and move up to Aberdeen before him, even though Creed got a full season last year. But hey, Basayo could just be a freak of nature, and that's possible. But I feel like a guy like Creed who was hurt by the elimination of short season ball, like the in between the FCL and low A. We saw a lot of the pitchers for the pitch for Delmarva last year. I feel like we're in that realm, and then not as actually pretty much a lot of the Delmarva guys were in that realm last year as well. But Creed, especially, just because he's so young. And like we've mentioned, clearly they skipped him right past the FCL for a reason. They thought he was too good for that, but clearly just low A was still a little overwhelming for him, at least early on. So yeah, hopefully, a year under his belt, or at least 3/4 of a season under his belt, he can come in a little more confident and get out of the gate strong and hopefully have a better season this year. Even if he plays in Delmarva all year long with the eye of going into Aberdeen next year in 2024, I feel like that would be a success.
Yeah, Bob, I think you hit the nail on the head that talking about the elimination of short season A ball, which was something we focused on a lot last year as we saw some of the young hitters in Delmarva and some of the young pitchers at Delmarva struggle. Regardless of his signing bonus, a guy like Willems, because he's a high school catcher in the old system of minor league baseball, not going back that far, would have probably been in short season A ball last year. And if he had gone there and hit 250 with an OPS of 760, everybody would be calling it a success. And then, to go to low A, though, after not having a lot of time in the FCL the year before, it's going to be a bit of a jump. I had Willems initially 50th on my list. He would now be 49th because that was the version of the list that was put together when Darryl Hernandez was still in the system. I held on to him in my personal top 50 because of the reports about his defense. And I am hopeful that the bat is going to come around a little bit in the second go around with Delmarva. There were signs of it at the end of the year, and I'm just holding out hope that that carries over to the start of this season.
Yeah, I pulled up his splits again. In August, he hit 281, 8 extra base hits, and an 864 OPS. So he finished the year extremely high. So I think for me, that was the big positive sign. So going into this year, I'm intrigued. I'm still not going to say I'm super high on Creed Willems, but I'm definitely intrigued. I want to see what he can do. Let's see if he can get to high A. But yeah, like you guys mentioned, if he spends the vast majority or all of the year in Delmarva, I don't think that's a bad thing, as long as he's playing well and hitting the ball well.
Yeah, completely agree. Before we move on, just to go back on something I said earlier, it was Kent Qualls who had talked up Vega. Qualls is the director of minor league operations for the Orioles. An article that was published on Masson back in December by Rock Cabato. Qualls had some insight about Alfred Vega. So if you want to learn a little bit more, that's a place to start. But we're certainly happy to see Vega and these other prospects take the field in the Orioles system in 2023. We're going to go now and kind of go deeper into this discussion and talk about some guys who intrigue us. And what we're doing is we're picking one hitter and one pitcher, although Nick has sort of added on to that. I'm going to start with Bob, though, because he has a hitter that definitely has some positive attributes and then a pitcher who is new to the system.
Well, first of all, I love the cheating. And the more names we can get on here, the better. I have no issue with that at all. I wish I would have thought of that first. But my hitter is going to be Colin Burns, just yet another infield prospect in this system. Shortstop. It's really, really solid defense from a good college program. He hit the ball actually with authority more than I thought he would have last year. Just seeing him in person, he definitely had some good swings on the ball. I feel like he played all year in Aberdeen, which we know kind of saps a lot of offense away from hitters. And he also missed some time towards the end of the year. Didn't he miss like the last month of the season or something like that with the hamstring, some lower body injury? But if he's going to start the year, I would imagine the starting shortstop for AA Bowie. I wonder if there's a little bit more there than maybe we were able to see just because of the confluence of situations being in Aberdeen and, a bunch of higher name value prospects around him that he didn't really get a chance to shine. Let's see what he can do offensively and defensively now that he's in the upper minors. And again, kind of like a bunch of guys, he's kind of like, this is kind of a make or to break it year, even though I feel like, he had a solid year and last year was his first full season. There's just a lot of infield prospects coming up. So every year is going to be make it or break it for these types of guys. And my pitcher is going to be Kyle Verbitsky, who was the return in the Darryl Hernandez trade along with Cole Irvin. Pretty crazy that you get pretty much your number one starter to start the season and a pitching prospect to go along with him to for Darryl Hernandez, like this, seventh best shortstop, seventh best shortstop in the system. Verbitsky actually kind of reminds me of Peter Van Loon. I mean, I haven't seen him pitch a ton, but just a really big-bodied guy with, he's got velocity. He's the one that didn't have many walks, right? He was like the best control in that system. So I just want to see, and yeah, Vivek says insane inverted vertical break, 6'8". That hoppy fastball, that's what the Orioles are looking for. I'm just really curious to see what they can do with this guy, get him in the system and work their magic. But yeah, I could easily see him being a guy that is like in our top 30, 40, 45 range by midseason.
I thought it was pretty interesting too. I can't remember where. I read this the other day, an interview he did recently. I'm trying to remember the author and where it was, but I can't remember off the top of my head. But it was an interview with Kyle Verbitsky, and he kind of talked about how he's pitched a lot. I think it's like travel ball or like pre-high school time. He pitched a lot in Aberdeen, so he's familiar with that ballpark. And he's from somewhere in Pennsylvania, so closer to being home. But I think if he starts back in high A, like that could be a cool little transition for him. You're back at a comfortable ballpark. You mentioned the height. It'd be interesting to see what he does. I get not like a physical comp, but I get, because they're not alike at all, but I get very much like Easton Lucas, Tyler Birch vibes here, because they're both these like no-name pitchers, really. They're not on any prospect list. They're high A, double A arms. In Birch's case, he's a reliever, but Birch was traded for Jonathan Villar, Easton Lucas. Wait, did I get that right?
Freddie Galvis.
Freddie Galvis. Yeah, Birch was Galvis. Easton Lucas was Jonathan Villar. Traded for these guys, and you're like, all right, who are they? They're nobodies. They're flyers, whatever. And now like Easton Lucas we've hyped him up a lot. We've talked about him a lot recently. Birch, I still think the stuff plays better than what the results have been for him, but I think Verbitsky is in that mold too, where give him a year or two in the system, and I think we're going to be talking about him a lot more in the near future. And I still can't believe that like you trade a guy who is not good. As much as we love Hernandez, we had him on the show. He's one of my favorite prospects in the system, but he was not going to have an opportunity in Baltimore. And so to trade him for a semi-proven major league starter and this guy, this extra flyer to have in your system, continues to blow my mind every time I think about this.
Yeah, completely agree. I'm really interested to see what Verbitsky does, just because he brings that elite command to the table. And then with Burns, I think he's going to be helped by Hernandez being traded because, Bob, when you put out your projected rosters back in December, you had Hernandez and Bowie with Burns. And it kind of seemed like it was going to be a situation like we have seen play out in the last few years across the Orioles system where you've got to find at bats for all of these middle infielders. We know that injuries sometimes have a way of sorting that out, but I think now Burns could immediately benefit with more time at shortstop from having Hernandez dealt.
Yeah, it really kind of just unlocked like that whole situation. It even like helped me put, I can't remember if it was, it helped me to put Jackson Holliday up to Aberdeen, since now we think he'll start there, and that makes a lot more sense now with Adam Crampton and
Aberdeen. Come on, he's starting on the major league roster.
Yeah,
where'd you go there watching him?
Yeah, I mean, God, he looks the part. I mean, he's got that presence. Gives like Taron Vavra type of bats. But yeah, let's start him at Aberdeen for now. We can move him up. But Adam Crampton and God, I can never remember the bonus baby from like the 17th round last year.
Carter Young,
yeah.
Okay.
It allows them to get more playing time in Delmarva as well. So I feel like Intermis was meant to be for at least one of the guys in that range to get moved, and it ended up being Hernandez. And yeah, I think Colin Burns could benefit a lot from that.
Go over to Nick now, because he has a couple of arms from Delmarva last year that we were really intrigued by, and then a guy who might grade out as having the best speed in the farm system.
Yeah, I went with two pitchers here. I'm lumping them together. I hate to do this, but I'm lumping them together because they're young, they're exciting, and I'm super intrigued. But Raul Rangel and Moises Chase, I think both these guys last year were in our top 50. I forgot to go back and look. I know Rangel was. Chase, I can't remember when he entered our top 50, but they've both been top 50 guys for us. But just injuries kind of wiped out the year for Rangel completely. He's just 20, and he doesn't turn 21 until after the season, so he is still extremely young. Chase is still only 19 and won't turn 20 until June. And he did get a good chunk of innings with Delmarva, but he also had some injuries. Both were signed in 2019, back when it was the J2 period. So 2020 was supposed to be their first full seasons, or their first just introduction into pro ball. They should have pitched in the DSL that year. Obviously, they didn't get to. So these guys have been delayed, and injuries have delayed them further. So I just think if one of these guys pops in 2023, like, you're adding another nice high ceiling arm into the mix here. Like, Rangel's listed at 6'4". He is rail thin, but there's like a lot of physical projection there. He can throw it in the mid 90s. He's got 3 pitches, huge changeup. Chase, I think, has pretty much the same pitch mix, but he's like 3-4 inches shorter than Rangel is. But I mean, he logged almost 60 innings with Delmarva as a 19-year-old. Only allowed 1 home run, 9.5 Ks per 9. The walks were a major issue for him. It was like 6 or 7 walks per 9 innings, which is obviously not very good. But, he had some injuries as well. He had that freak injury where I thought he completely shattered his ankle on the mound. It was like a weird hole or something in the dirt. Completely freak injury, but he came back a couple weeks later, I think. But, if he starts in high A, which I don't think he will, but he did log almost 60 innings in Delmarva last year. And if he has a good, healthy spring, maybe gets that bump up to high A. But I can see both these guys in Delmarva's rotation. I'm excited to watch both of them for sure. If Chase starts back in Delmarva, he shouldn't be there for long. And the hitter, I'm going to Luis Valdez. I just think he doesn't have any power. He can't field very well. They moved him around infield, outfield. He's very, very raw, but my man stole 71 bases last season. And actually, by the end of the summer, was hitting in Delmarva. He was hitting really well, like 315, 320 batting average, with almost a on-base percentage of just south of like 400 across June and July before he got promoted to Aberdeen. I just think if that speed is not going anywhere, and you can't teach that kind of speed that he has, if he can just hit that little bit and continue to get on base a little bit as he moves up the system, you got a Terrence Gore type player here. Can't hit, but he's got 2 World Series rings under his belt. I could see that with Luis Valdez, a guy who you bring in for speed at the end of a game and a guy you keep around your organization. So we'll see if he can hit the ball, though, as he continues to move up.
Could you imagine? And I could realistically see this being the case. This fall, Orioles clinch a playoff spot, September 22nd or whatever. All of a sudden, Luis Valdez is on that 40-man roster. He's on the playoff roster because he's just – if you got a runner on first, a slow runner on second in a meaningful late game situation, he's going in there. Jorge Mateo or not, this guy is fast, lightning fast. So, and yeah, if he can just use his size to an advantage, maybe learn to, get them swing decisions a little bit better, get the plate discipline, maybe can walk at an above average rate and just hit enough to get on base enough times to use that speed. Could be potentially something there down the line. Just a guy that just sits at AAA waiting for the playoffs, baby.
Yeah, Valdez is interesting to me because one of my favorite stats from last year was actually his monthly splits. And as Nick was talking, I was reminded of it here. He started out with a 271, 673 OPS through his first 16 games in April. Then he had a horrible May and then bounced back in June by hitting 333 with a 762 OPS, which for a guy who doesn't hit for power is pretty good. And then 297 with a 749 OPS in July. He dipped back down in August, but the bat did come along a little bit. And what I'm interested to see is stolen bases probably are going to go back up in the majors this year. And does that increase the probability that a guy like Valdez, who in recent years probably would have topped out at AA or AAA as a role player that you kept around for his speed and his versatility, but isn't a big leaguer, now all of a sudden has some value because you are going to be stealing more bases. So that ability to pull him off the bench late in the game to steal a base, score from first on a ball hit in the gap is going to matter a lot more. It's interesting, too, is that Valdez was Rule 5 eligible this past December. So the Orioles may have to make that 40-man roster decision with him if he breaks out this year. And then Chase and Rangel, I'm really anxious to see both of them back at Delmarva this year, especially when I see Rangel throw more, because that was two guys that coming into last year we were kind of anointing as the new Gene Pintos. And
there's no new Gene Pinto. There's only one Gene Pinto. Okay.
Okay. Yep. You're right. The closest thing to Gene Pinto that is not Gene Pinto is what we were anointing them.
Yeah, and like we said, at least one of these, some of these international guys that have huge stuff for their super young ages are going to break out in a big way, and it's just a matter of who. And it's exciting to watch because both of these guys could easily be it. They're super young, super talented. It's just about reining it in, staying healthy, getting that control.
Yeah, and like I mentioned, they were 2020 being supposed to be their first year. Even like that first, I can remember timelines correctly here. Like the first signing period, the Orioles had a lot of these early international signings. Like they had the first year interrupted, or they got a little bit of a taste of pro ball, and then they had 2020 shut down, so their development was delayed there, or they had to wait a whole nother year before they debuted professionally. I just think it's delayed a lot of this stuff, but you're going to start to see a lot of these guys like, man, we signed him back in 2019 and he's just now coming up, but yeah, he's still like 19 years old. So the Orioles have gotten him back on track. You're going to see definitely at least one hitter, one pitcher really break out, and you're going to see like a midseason Baseball America update where they're like a top 30 guy, or they're getting huge accolades from Baseball America as a potential top 30 guy. I don't know who, but I have a strong feeling like Davey Cruz last year was that guy. Who's this year's Davey Cruz going to be? It could be one of those guys.
Gene Pinto.
I'll go over to my group now, and I went with Daniel Lloyd, a reliever who pitched at Delmarva and Aberdeen last year. Lloyd is a typical power reliever fastball, but he has a very good breaking ball. And what's interesting is that it is Lloyd Delmarva to Aberdeen last year. With the jump up to a new level, his walk per 9 innings went down from 3.5 at Delmarva to 2.5 with the Ironbirds, and he was able to maintain pretty good strikeout numbers. So Lloyd, a guy who was drafted in 2021, if you're looking for a reliever that could hit the upper levels in the minor leagues this year and be successful, definitely keep an eye on Lloyd. I think we're going to have a few pitchers that fit that mold this year in the Orioles system, but Lloyd is one I have my eye on. And then another one is a hitter that I feel like sort of was lost in the shuffle towards the end of last year, even though we were really interested in following him early on in Delmarva, and that was Trendon Craig. Craig didn't join the Shorebirds until May, and there were pluses and minuses to Craig's run at Delmarva, but what jumps out is that he had a walk rate just under 14%, a WRC plus of 114 in 251 plate appearances with the Shorebirds before being promoted to Aberdeen. He struggled a little bit more in Aberdeen, and then with the influx of outfielders from the draft with Dylan Beavers and Judd Fabian entering the system, it got a little bit more challenging at the end for Craig to have at-bats. But if he could get regular playing time, I'm curious to see what he's going to do, because this is a guy who came out of a junior college program, Lewisburg in North Carolina, drafted in the 20th round of the 2021 draft. Internally, I think the Orioles are high on him. And where you want to see him develop as a hitter is that for a guy his size, he can probably hit for more power than he has so far. And the strikeouts right now, for me, even with that high walk rate, are too high for a guy that's not hitting for a lot of power. So if the power can start to tick up a little bit, he becomes a guy that's a lot more interesting for me, especially because he's just 22 now, doesn't have a ton of experience. So he's probably a little more raw than what his age suggests. And if he can get consistent at bats at Aberdeen this year, I'm going to be curious to see how he develops.
Yeah, for whatever reason, like Daniel Lloyd, I feel like should be. Maybe this is a sign that I pay way too close attention to this system. But like Daniel Lloyd, I feel like should be like 24, 25 years old. I don't know why. Every time I think of him or I watch him pitch, I think he's way older than he actually is. He's only 21 years old and won't turn 22 until closer to the end of the season. I just looked that up. So, yeah, he is definitely a bullpen arm to watch. I know the organization has kind of started pushing his name out a little bit, so we'll see what he does next year. And Craig, yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there with how raw he is. 20th round JUCO pick, and just didn't get regular playing time last year. You mentioned those draft guys coming in, and those draft guys followed him to Aberdeen even. So he's up in Aberdeen like, all right, I'm going to get more playing time. Nope, here comes Judd Fabian and everybody else behind him. So yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with giving him another year, see what he can do. Face more advanced pitching that he's ever faced in his career and see if he can rise to that challenge. Again, JUCO kid, so extremely raw, just had a little bit longer to catch up to the rest of his peers, I think.
Yeah, I think Craig is raw, but I feel like there's pretty good upside there. And, he's going to start in Aberdeen most likely with those guys again, Fabian, Beavers, even Reed Trimble. So he might not be able to really come into his own until those guys inevitably get promoted around May or June, and he starts to get a little more everyday playing time. But I would not be surprised if he ends 2023 with a taste of AA towards the end of the season, and it's like, okay, here's a guy that 2024 could be his breakout. So I feel like this is the pre-breakout season for Trenton Craig. I like that pick. And yeah, Daniel Lloyd, that is crazy. He's only 21. It might be a name thing. That's like an old person name, Daniel Lloyd. But yeah, he's really good. And I feel like we started to hear Matt Blood say his name a little more. And I guess it's about that time we should try to somebody should try to get Matt Blood on the phone and get this year's version of who's going to break out this spring. It can be anyone. I saw Blaine Knight and what's his left-handed Kevin Smith are still in the organization at early minor league camp. Maybe they can get them back on track. Let's see.
Knight, possibly Kevin Smith. Let's talk about hot prospects.
Well, I think that's a good segue. Bob has been down in Sarasota, and I have to say that I don't know that I've ever hated Bob more than yesterday afternoon. It's about 10 minutes before first pitch. I'm here in Baltimore switching laundry. It's gray outside. It's like snowflakes dancing around, and Bob's down to Ed Smith Stadium, which is truly one of the best ballparks in Florida in sunny weather, about to watch a game that ultimately was filled with a lot of highlights from prospects. And in fact, that's been the theme of the first two games of the spring. And Bob has had the fortune to see them both, the one in Sarasota on Saturday against the Twins, and then Sunday in Lakeland against the Tigers. So, Bob, Heston Kjerstad, 2 home runs on Saturday. That home run that he hit opposite field, was that as impressive as it looked on video?
Well, I don't think it happened because I actually missed both of those. I couldn't get video. No. Yeah, I mean, he almost had 3 of them. Both of his home runs were opposite field. The first one clanged off the foul pole. The second one was a lot more impressive because it was more left center field, and he got all of that one. And then he just missed, just foul on the left field line, another home run before he turned on a fastball and singled to the right side. Thank you for banning the shift, Mr. Manfred. Yeah, and then he had another hit today. So Heston Kjerstad was like, what? I dropped out of your top 10. Time to fix that. So, yeah, if he can start like this in AA, because no matter how good he does, we know he's going to start in AA, then he might not be there very long because he looks like he's picking up right where he left off in the Arizona Fall League. And by the way, don't be too jealous. I got burnt. It was a little sunny. You don't want that.
I mean, we were talking before we came on the air. I've got a 3-year-old who is in full-blown 3-year-old mode. So I would take a sunburn out of Florida every day of the week. You had some interesting comments about Cesar Prieto, and we saw he's appeared in both games. He's 3 for 3 with a double. I've pulled up, I didn't realize until like 2 minutes before we came on, but there was StatCast data. And the hardest hit balls of the day against the Tigers were Lewin Diaz, that home run, 110 miles an hour, Franchy Cordero, 107.2 miles an hour, and then Cesar Prieto, 107.1 miles an hour. I said a couple weeks ago that I'm the low guy on the show on Cesar Prieto, and I think he's going to make me eat my words.
Yeah, let's just say he looks like a shorter left-handed version of Yusniel Diaz now. Dude has bulked up big time. Last year, I thought, when I was watching him in Aberdeen that first month of the season, I thought he looked a little skinny, didn't really have the arm for shortstop, was bouncing throws, maybe intentionally, maybe not. But my God, he has bulked up in a big way and is hitting the ball hard, obviously, 107 miles per hour. It's pretty darn good. Yeah, I'm very curious to see what he does after an off season of hopefully resting, but it certainly does not look like that's what he was doing. Whether he was playing baseball a lot or not, he was definitely in the weight room. And, if he's not going to get that walk rate up, which we know he's a free swinger, he's got that hit tool, then you might as well have the power that comes with it. As long as he can go without getting suspended, let's do it.
Yeah, looking at left-handed hitters, Terrin Vavra has gotten off to an excellent start this spring. What are you seeing from him?
Who knew he could play third base like that? I don't know if he's got the arm to play there regularly. Probably not. I'd say it's probably a little below average, especially for that position. But God, he's making dive-in plays to his right, to his left, getting up, throw him out. Tough plays here. But that's great. He was practicing at first base. If he can play third base now, we know he can play second and center field in a pinch, but I'm sure he can play left. Just you want to be that guy that, hey, you need to fill in at this position. I'm your guy. And he just has great at-bats. We already knew that about him. Great plate discipline, really good contact skills, bat-to-ball skills. And now all of a sudden he's launching ground rule doubles and homers over the batter's eye in center field. I mean, who is this guy? He's really fighting for a job right now. And it's a great start, and I hope he can keep it up because he's a fun player to watch when he's on the field.
Yeah, hopefully. Just give him some playing time already. Yeah, I think just as far as the other hitters go too, like Norby had a pair of hits today. Joey Ortiz had a really nice hit. I think he almost hit a home run too in that first game of the season. You saw a lot of these guys, but like Jackson Holiday, I don't know if did any of you guys see him in person last year after the draft? What is he like up close and personal? Is all the hype for real with Jackson Holiday?
It just may be. Like, it was shocking when he got the invitation to MLB spring training. I think even the Orioles have talked about, like, this is not normal. Like, even Brandon Hyde is, like, talking him up. Prieto balked up. Looks like old Jackson was in the weight room as well because his bicep was bulging out of his jersey at shortstop. And just like Terran Vavra, he looks like just a super professional hitter up there. He is not swinging at bad pitches, and he's 19 years old going up against at least, he's getting into these games late, so at least like AA, AAA quality pitchers. And he just looks the part. I mean, obviously he's going to go back down to A-ball no matter what, just like Heston's going to AA no matter what. A lot of these things are locked in, but he's just setting himself up to have an amazing season. And if he can gain some confidence by hitting a hustle double in the right center field in his first ever spring training at bat, second pitch he sees, working a walk today, and then almost working another one, got the count to 2-2, then took a really tough pitch that was just outside before swinging and missing for strike 3. I mean, he's fast too. He's really fast on the bases. Just seems really smart, which is not surprising. I mean, he's Matt Holliday's son. I'm sure this is all he's done his whole life, but it's just super impressive to see. And yeah, if he can take that confidence down with him to Delmarva, Aberdeen, Bowie, wherever he gets this year, I can't imagine that things are going to be any harder than they are right now. And he's already looking like he belongs.
I did have one more question about hitters real quick. Curtis Terry is starting over Ryan Mountcastle opening day, right? Is that?
I mean, that home run was impressive that he hit. But again, it was late in the game against, this is a veteran who's
there's your Jake Fox.
Yes, Jake Fox. Between him and Lewin Diaz, I mean, they're demolishing the pitching that they're facing, which, hey, you got to do what you got to do. But yeah, I don't know. Not too worried about Curtis Terry, seeing him at the major league level this year. But man, it's just Joey Ortiz, like you mentioned, man. He just missed. You know how he can drive that ball to the opposite field. I've seen him do it at Bowie. He drove the ball right to the wall in right field, and then next time up, just a beautiful swing on a line drive off the center field wall for a triple. He's faster than he looks too, I think. Yeah, man, Joey Ortiz is fun. I really hope he either starts the year in the majors. That seems like a lofty goal, but early on this season, we got to get him up to Baltimore. I think fans are going to love that kid.
It looks like Colton Cowser is stringing together good at bat after good at bat right now. Something that stood out to me from Saturday's game, I think it was in his first plate appearance. He was down 0-2 and then worked his way back to draw a walk, which is just not something you see very often, especially from a hitter that young. So, Bob, how's Cowser looking at the plate right now?
You mean walk god? That's the only way. He is taking over the mantle of walk god. And honestly, man, that's the most exciting thing about these young prospects coming up is that these are not your typical Orioles free swinging, go for the home run. I mean, these guys are working pitches. They're working at bats, taking walks. It's so fun to watch. I mean, we're looking like the Yankees and Red Sox of the 90s and 2000s out here. Yeah, he's just got an incredible eye. And yeah, and the one thing I did notice him playing center field, I think he can stick out there. He might not have the natural athleticism of a Mullins or, he might not even be a plus center fielder, but I think he can be at least average. He gets amazing reads, amazing jumps on on these fly balls. There's like line drives. I'm watching him, and he just like immediately breaks back. He didn't hesitate at all. It just seems like he's really good at getting these reads. So whether it's left field, right field, center field, I think he's going to be well suited for all three positions. So not worried about that. Sorry, Eric Longenhagen and Keith Law, but yeah, I'm not worried about Kowser at all. He looks like he's in midseason form as far as the batting approach goes.
And you got to watch Cade Povich. I think that was made the trip worthwhile in of itself. We'll see. Everybody's new favorite darling. Thanks for hopping on board. Welcome. Refreshments are out back. Yeah, 2 scoreless innings, 1 hit, no walks, 3 swinging strikeouts. How did he look in person?
Just really confident, really good. Was sitting 93, 94 with the fastball, so he's not blowing you away, but like he said when we interviewed him last week, he's got a lot of pitches and he was mixing them really well. Like just you could tell the hitters didn't really know it was coming. 3 strikeouts, all were swinging. He also first batter he faced, I think he gave up his only hit. It was a little bit hit hard, but next batter double play, Cesar Prieto to Jackson Holliday to our man Curtis Terry, and then struck out 3 batters after that in his 2 innings. So yeah, I mean, Cade Povich season is here. The Jorge Lopez trade was not a bad trade. Sorry, Connor Newcomb. It's okay. You can change your mind.
Yeah, I'm looking at the baseball savant data right now for Povich's outing on Sunday, and it records him as throwing a 4-seam fastball, a sinker, a slider, a changeup, and a curveball. So really working in the repertoire against the Tigers hitters.
And I almost feel like he threw a cutter in there too, but I could be wrong. I mean, yeah, he's just mixing those pitches in, and I think he's just, I think he's going to end up throwing maybe a tick faster. Maybe he's going to sit 94, 95 instead of 93, 94 once he's really settled in. And man, it's just maybe ESPN's Kylie McDaniel is right on the money, and we're all going to be chasing that top 50 type prospect here soon.
Yeah, I was trying to, what did he touch? I lost it. Didn't he touch like 97? Where's the player?
I must have missed that.
Yeah, top fastball for Povich
or 96.
94.6.
94. Okay, I don't know what I was looking at then. Never mind.
That's still pretty good, though. That's still pretty good.
Yeah, round up 95.
Yeah, for a lefty, take it.
Yeah.
Looks like go ahead, Nick.
I would just say I like that. I'm really glad that he came out in that first spring outing and it played as well as he did. That's impressive. That's huge, especially after all this offseason hype. Let's hope that continues. We'll see. I'm interested to see how long they keep him in big league camp, but maybe with some of these WBC guys leaving in the next couple of days, maybe he sticks around a little bit longer. But I think that's huge for Cade Povich, that outing. It's day 2 of spring training, but still for a young guy like that's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, and outside of him on the pitching side, it was really just a lot of the NRI reliever types that have great stuff, but they just need to locate. And Juan Centrales was in particular a wild inning to watch as he struck out 2, walked 2, hit a batter, gave up a home run. Just really did it all, man. He's fun.
Anything else stand out to you performance-wise? Anything fun happen while you were down there? Well, you're down there still, but in the games you went to.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed every second of it. Just really glad the team won both games and scored 10 runs both times. It was a lot of fun, and all I know is Mike Elias has this shirt in his possession. I saw him at the game, gave him and Kobe Perez a free shirt. I don't know why I became free shirt guy all of a sudden this weekend, but it was kind of fun. Kobe Mayo got one. Joey Ortiz got one. Didn't have any big enough for Noah Denoy or Ryan Watson, who I saw down there, but just a great time. Can't wait to come back, and I wish Masson was showing more games because I'm ready for baseball. Like, this got me totally hyped for the season, and just glad it's here, man.
Yeah, absolutely. And we will have coverage throughout the spring for you as things happen on the field at Sarasota and we get more news out of the backfields and anything else that pops up along the way here in the coming weeks between now and opening day. You're going to want to follow us on Twitter at BSL on the Verge. And also be sure to join our Patreon community if you have not yet. For as little as $3 a month, you'll have access to a WhatsApp group. And in our higher tiers, you can join for daily content from us, which we will have throughout the regular season. We had our top 50 prospects list unveiled day by day to patrons over January and February. And we're just getting started with the daily content that will be posted there. And be sure to check out BaltimoreSportsAndLife.com Orioles coverage is just ramping up there on the site. There's also some college sports as well, and of course NFL coverage throughout the year. And while you're there, be sure to hop on the message board and join in discussing with fellow readers of the site as well as contributors to BSL. We will be back at our normal time and night next Monday night at 8 p.m. In the meantime, for Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens, this is Zach Sped, and you've been listening to On the Verge.
That'll do it for this week's episode of On the Verge. Be sure to check out our Patreon page where you can help show your support for the show and get bonus content, including monthly top 50 updates to our prospect list and daily game recaps during the season, and much, much more.